statement. We'll take the other texts and then we come back to it. So it's up to you.
Honorable Chair, co-panelists and friends here. I think I'll be inviting a lot of criticisms rather than appreciation, which is very much expected once I speak on the issue that I want to place before you, NRC, National Register of Citizens. I'll not take any academic and theoretical position. I'll present before you the position that I'm taking on the ground, and I'm defending NRC. And it has been a very, very difficult task on the part of the people like me who have progressive left leanings to come in terms with NRC. And why have we done it? I'll try to explain it. Once the NRC was published, the first draft was published, EPW invited to write me a commentary on NRC. And I had written it and titled it as NRC and Destiny of Assam. And within a month, the commentary was published and title was changed. The title was changed to Political Destiny of Immigrants in Assam. I titled it NRC and this Political Destiny of Assam, which was not exclusive of the the immigrants in Assam, but EPW thought it to be bad, it to change into Political Destiny of Immigrants in Assam, as if it is all about excluding the immigrants from the NRC document. All of you must have seen the kind of reaction which has come about once the final draft has been published. This has been condemned to a great extent because 4 million, more than 4 million applicants have been excluded from the NRC. And it has a linguistic and religious component because most of the people who have been excluded from the draft are supposed to be, it may or may not be, supposed to be East Bengal origin Muslims. Therefore, there have been, for example, a lot of protests, lot of reactions. I'm not go into details of it, but I'll read out a few reactions that came up from different quarters. Particularly, there was a petition by Awaz, signed by 3.3 lakhs, people, signatories. It was published before the appeal was issued, before the NRC final draft was published in 30th July 2018. It said, in a few days, India will delete as many as 7 million Muslims in Assam state from its master list of citizens because they speak the wrong language and worship the wrong god. Husbands, wives and children could be torn apart and left to rot in bus and prison camps. The petition says in the opening remarks, it also said, this is how genocide began, how the nightmare of Rohingya began. But it is all unfolding quietly if we raise a massive alarm calling for the UN Secretary General and key governments to intervene. We can stop this horror before it starts. This is why Awaz. And one of the most important left intellectuals of Assam, Hiren Gohain, who was beaten up during Assam agitation and who started the debate in EPW on the Assam movement with a title called Cudgel of Chauvinism, which debate ultimately turned into a bigger debate being initiated by Amalendra Guha, little chauvinism turned, little nationalism turned chauvinist. That was, I think, one of the very strong debates that ever had happened on the nationality question in India. Hiren Guha started Cudgel of Chauvinism, and because he was very critical of the movement, its chauvinist character, its intolerant character, its exclusivist nature and its right-wing agenda, he was beaten up, and he also published a handwritten kind of leaflet called Kalakhar, which he distributed, cycling from one place to the other. So he was so critical about the movement. And he was also very critical about the Assam Accord. However, very recently he called Assam Accord as public law contract. I'll come to that. But before that, what he has spoken on the NRC, let me just read a few lines from him. He said, chauvinism has since independence been the deadly enemy of all radical and genuinely democratic forces in Assam. The Assamese ruling elite lacked both economic resources and cultural strength to be able to integrate non-Assamese groups into Assamese society. Yet it has not abandoned its dream of national resurgence in a capitalist setup. Hence, it uses from time to time the cudgel of chauvinism to beat into submission non-Assamese groups who might resist the domination. Chauvinism is by nature authoritarian and fascist, and an ally of the Indian ruling class as a whole. This is the reason why chauvinist, eminent Indian intellectuals from outside the state have blessed the movement, which has been nightmare to thousands of innocent people. While the tyranny, this quote he wrote in 1980 while criticizing the movement. However, after this NRC was published, I must have missed it somewhere. I'll talk about that. He has been one of the defenders of NRC. Now, from cudgel of chauvinism to that of acceptance of NRC, or for that matter, acceptance of the Assam Accord as a public law contract, is something very, very critical. Therefore, when people of Assam, particularly left progressive intellectuals, have also started joining hands in defending the NRC, it is important that we need to understand the critical journey. I am 6 years old now. Throughout my life, I have seen violence. When I was 6, 7 years old, Assam movement started. And Assam movement started, then Alpha's violence started. And Alpha violence continued till 2001, 2002, 2005, so on and so forth. In between, the ethnic insurgencies started. Therefore, my journey of my life has been marked by the violence around. I have witnessed it. Probably for the first time, we have seen relative peace. After the publication of NRC, no violence so far has occurred, and it manifests a kind of working consensus around NRC. Now, my understanding, what I'm trying to propose here is to understand how this working consensus has emerged. I'm not romanticizing NRC. I'm not taking Indian state granted. I'm also not romanticizing civil society, which has taken a very important role in building this, consensus around NRC. But there has emerged a working consensus around NRC, where East Bengal origin Muslims have also taken active part. That is the important thing that I want to place before you. Remember, NRC is what I have termed as adjudicated citizenship. The whole NRC process has been carried out under the monitoring, under the jurisdiction, under the direction of the Supreme Court of India. And that has not been an easy process. And if you look at 1951 NRC, it was closed kind of exercise. People didn't have any access to that, how has it been prepared, and so on and so forth. But as far as this particular NRC is concerned, court was open to a lot of litigations. It started in 2009, and it is yet to come to the final culmination of it. Probably it will take 2-3 more years. But if you look at the whole process in the judiciary, it has opened itself for a lot of litigations. It's not that only this particular, it set the agenda in 2014-17 December, when it had given the most important verdict on preparing the NRC, and it had also laid down a time frame that you have to do within this particular time. But the incumbent governments, at that time it was Congress, which was not very appreciative of the whole task, and it delayed it. Once the BJP government came, they wanted to stop it. Funding was completely stopped. And they introduced this, this particular Citizenship Amendment Bill 2016. Now this is very interesting. Citizenship, and it was preceded by three important, notifications on the part of Union government, bringing amendment to the Foreigners Act, Passport Act, and Citizenship Act of India, and giving, citizenship to the Hindu refugees from Bangladesh till 31st December 2014. Now this is very interesting to note that in 2016 assembly election took place, and in the assembly election BJP-led coalition had done something extraordinary. It didn't have any strong substantive political base, but by manipulating, by aligning with these indigenous groups, creating manufacturing a rainbow coalition, it captured power. And civil society groups, media, ethnic organizations, almost all supported this particular wave of electoral wave. Remember, 43 individuals, intellectuals, learned people, issued an appeal just 2 days ahead of the assembly election. I was one among them. Hiren Gohai was taking the lead, not to vote for BJP. It made it very clear, if you vote for BJP, but there was no alternative. Rather than helping out, it provoked people to come out in large number and vote for BJP. But once this BJP came to power and this Citizenship Amendment Bill was introduced, there was a huge protest in Assam. And all sections of the society except for BJP and RSS came together to resist the bill. I think that was a momentum. If you look at last 1 year or so, Assam was not talking about NRC. Assam was talking more of resisting the the Citizenship Amendment Bill. But it was not only that. Assam was also building resistance against auctioning, opening up international bidding of oil fields in Assam, resisting naming the colleges after Dindayal Upadhyay, and also imposing Sanskrit as a compulsory subject in the schools. Taking together, these issues facilitated a process through which the progressive sections of the society were trying to capture the civil society spaces in Assam. It is at this juncture that there was a momentum, and when the JPC, Joint Parliamentary Committee on this particular Citizenship Amendment Bill, had visited Guwahati, I think an unprecedented situation, unprecedented kind of things happened. People coming all across the country, except for Barak Valley, they had given the memorandums, and the JPC had to extend its time. It probably till 11, it had to listen to or receive the memorandums. One of the important issues came up. If you look at those memorandums, it said something very particular, that Indian constitution is a secular constitution. Citizenship is a secular identity. You cannot compromise it with the religion. Therefore, we do not accept it. Second thing, it said that Assam Accord has this sanctity because based on its Citizenship Amendment Act was introduced in 1986, so it is a public law contract. It is through all these processes, fighting with what I said, new liberal feudalism and also new liberal primordiality, that people were trying to understand the political processes. Might be wrong, might be, I don't know. I'm just finishing it within seconds. Therefore, it's a very critical situation. Sitting in Assam when we are trying to negotiate with the greater political forces and greater civil society forces, we are taking NRC as one of the important documents, which will definitely exclude certain categories of people. But there will probably we are expecting, we may be wrong, we may be right, we are expecting that it will provide us some space, to bargain for the cause of those who have now been excluded. The process has started. Given a chance, I'll talk about what the alternatives that people are talking about, we are talking about. We do not stand for deportation of the people, and we believe that Indian state has a responsibility, even if they are not given citizenship, they have to be given right to life with security. Thank you very much.